Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, your go-to destination for deep dives into South Africa's biggest political scandals, power struggles, and the truth behind the headlines. Today, we are unpacking one of the most shocking and deeply disturbing corruption scandals in South African history, the R180 billion South African lottery debacle. A story riddled with luxury homes, ghost projects, stolen futures, and a shocking betrayal of public trust. At the center of it all, powerful figures with political connections, including former National Lotteries Commission chairperson, Alfred Nevhutanda. So, how did funds meant for building schools, supporting NGOs, and uplifting poor communities end up paying for mansions, expensive cars, and non-existent development projects? Was the ANC government complicit, negligent, or just woefully blind? And how far down does this rabbit hole go? Let's break it all down. The National Lotteries Commission, or NLC, was established to ensure that revenue generated from lottery ticket sales would be distributed fairly, mainly to support community upliftment, education, health, and sports initiatives. This was a system designed to give hope, especially to South Africa's poorest communities. But somewhere along the line, hope turned into exploitation. Over the years, evidence slowly emerged that billions of rands were being siphoned off by a network of insiders, well-connected businesspeople, and politically linked figures. What started as whispers of irregularity soon evolved into full-blown revelations of systematic fraud, tender manipulation, and fake projects that were signed off and funded without proper oversight. At the center of this web of corruption is Alfred Nevhutanda, who served as chairperson of the NLC from 2009 to 2020. During his tenure, the NLC became a cash cow for the politically connected. According to investigative reports from GroundUp and Daily Maverick, as well as shocking findings by the Special Investigating Unit (SIU), the corruption wasn't just accidental mismanagement, it was intentional, organized, and protected. Let's start with the money trail. The SIU has uncovered that over R1.4 billion in lottery funds was misused or went unaccounted for, and that's just from the cases they've managed to probe. In reality, many experts and investigative journalists believe that the true number could be closer to R180 billion over the years, money that was supposed to uplift the poor, but ended up funding opulence for the elite. For example, a luxury mansion in Pretoria valued at over R27 million, allegedly paid for using lottery funds, was directly linked to Nevhutanda. Other properties were traced to close associates, family members, and even middlemen who helped orchestrate the funding of fake or unfinished projects. Several NGOs that supposedly received money from the lottery either don't exist, never completed their projects, or were fronts created to loot. One infamous case involved a R20 million grant that was supposedly allocated for a drug rehabilitation center. But GroundUp found that the center had never been built, and the registered NPO was linked to known associates of Nevhutanda and other senior NLC officials. Meanwhile, in communities across Limpopo, the Eastern Cape, and the Free State, dilapidated schools and community halls remain abandoned, with signs reading, "Funded by the National Lotteries Commission," yet no actual work was done. In another instance, a sports development project for rural youth received millions in funding. But when reporters visited the location, not a single child was being trained, and the field was overgrown with weeds. Equipment that was supposedly purchased never existed, and contractors had vanished. So how did this happen under the radar? Insiders say the NLC operated with very little transparency. Reports were delayed or redacted, and whistleblowers were intimidated. In fact, some journalists working on these stories received threats, legal action, and pressure from powerful figures trying to bury the scandal. But thanks to relentless investigative journalism, especially from GroundUp's Raymond Joseph and others, the truth has started to come out. What's even more concerning is the apparent political protection some of these officials enjoyed. Nevhutanda wasn't just a bureaucrat, he had strong ties to ANC power brokers, and there's growing suspicion that key leaders in government either ignored the warning signs or actively protected those involved. The ANC has denied any wrongdoing or cover-up, but they haven't convincingly explained why no meaningful oversight was enforced, especially as red flags emerged year after year. Critics argue that the ANC was either too weak to confront its own, or simply unwilling to cut off a stream of politically useful funding that helped grease the wheels of power in key constituencies. The SIU has since referred dozens of cases for criminal prosecution, and several former NLC executives have been arrested or had their assets frozen. But prosecutions are slow, and no high-profile political figures have yet faced consequences, despite the mountain of evidence pointing to systemic abuse. Which brings us to the broader question, what happened to the billions? That money could have transformed rural schools, built clinics, supported young athletes, and helped victims of gender-based violence. Instead, it was used to buy BMWs, beachfront homes, and private security. And while the elites lived in luxury, communities were left waiting for funding that never came. Some of the worst damage is invisible but long-lasting. NGOs that tried to apply for legitimate funding were sidelined in favor of fake charities. Community trust in government support structures has been destroyed. And ordinary citizens, those who buy lottery tickets believing they are contributing to a good cause, have been robbed without even knowing it. So where do we go from here? The current NLC leadership has promised reforms and accountability. New transparency measures are being introduced. But the shadow of this scandal still looms large. There are calls for a full judicial commission of inquiry, much like the Zondo Commission, to uncover how deep the rot really goes. There's also a growing movement demanding that politicians who benefited from this system of corruption be named and shamed, and that recovered funds be directly invested into real, verifiable community programs. But perhaps the biggest lesson here is that without accountability, systems like the NLC are ripe for abuse. When the watchdogs are asleep or complicit, the people suffer. And in this case, the people of South Africa lost not just money, but opportunity, dignity, and hope. As the investigations continue and the legal battles unfold, we'll be watching every step closely, because South Africans deserve to know the truth about what happened to their lottery money, and who's responsible. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do you believe the full truth will ever come out? Should there be a new commission? And who do you think is still hiding behind the shadows? Don't forget to like this video if you found it informative, subscribe to the channel for more political exposés, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. We break down the corruption, cover-ups, and power plays shaping South Africa's future. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.